Toby, thanks very much for asking me to be a part of this. It should be a lot of fun. My name is Tom Salinksy. I'm a writer, podcaster, corporate coach, and I've picked as my story The Time Warrior, a story I think is the perfect story to show a new Who fan who's never seen the classic series before. It's the first story for Sarah Jane Smith. We get to see the Doctor through her eyes. It's the first story featuring the Sontarans. It's the first pseudo-historical, something which is a big feature of the new series, celebrity historicals, but we hadn't seen them in the show before. I think it is a great story. It's one of my favourites. I fell in love with it the very first time I saw it. I'm going to be watching the as broadcast version on the DVD. There's a version with spiffed up special effects. That probably is the version I would show this mythical new fan. But the last time I watched it, I watched that version. So today I'm going to watch the broadcast version instead, which I suspect is what you're going to do. So none of the things I've said are going to be my favourite things. I haven't decided what these are yet. I haven't watched the show again. So sit back and relax. Enjoy, with me, The Time Warrior.
Well, welcome everybody. That will have been the voice of our special guest, Tom Salinksy, who has chosen The Time Warrior. And by a massive coincidence, he sent me his thoughts on The Time Warrior over the period of Christmas 2020. Oh, that old riot. And it struck me that, oh, well, that's pretty much, it was broadcast, Christmas and New Year, 1973-74. And the reason that's interesting and appealing to me, and human beings do like seeing patterns in things that aren't there, is that I'm recording this on the back end of January the 2nd, 2021. We're full of hope at this point in the year that the pestilence will go and we'll all live happily ever after. You might be listening to this in a wasteland of corpses and unused masks and slightly embarrassed Daily Mail headlines. But speaking to you from the past, we're currently doing okay. We just had a slightly quiet Christmas, but it's also my birthday. As I say, when I record this, not when you listen to this, so don't send me anything. Not that you were going to. But the reason I know about The Time Warrior and my birthday is because a few years ago I decided to work out something I didn't know, which I'd have thought would be something I'd have tried to discover very early on, and that is what my birth story is, and it's this. So this, episode 3 of The Time Warrior, which we're just about to watch, is the last episode of Doctor Who to be broadcast before I was born. Yes, so that means it holds no special footnote in Doctor Who history at all. But for me, it's a little thing. And enough of my little thing. We're going to press play to watch the last episode of Doctor Who before the world changed forever. And its anorak quotient went up just a little bit. On account of 3, 2, 1, press play now. So here we are, the time tunnel. Well, it's still a bit weird to me to see Jon Pertwee in the Tom Baker title sequence, or part of it, and his full figure, although they did do it with his arms, because he was very good. Nobody can enter a room and spread his arms out wide and not look like a Burke that isn't Jon Pertwee, who just somehow makes it work. It's like Larry Turner said of him in that 30 Years the TARDIS documentary, nobody can pull off frilly shirts apart from Jon Pertwee and Jimi Hendrix. And who am I to argue with fashion guru Larry Turner? I like the little smile that Hal the Archer shoots Sarah Jane there. He thinks she's a feisty lady. I promised to talk about the episode more. I got a little bit introspective last week, or 5 minutes ago, depending on whether you're my time or not. I make no apologies. This is me talking in front of an episode of Doctor Who, unscripted, unplanned, unresearched. It's the cliffhanger's a slight hodgepodge, isn't it? Because it cuts back to quite far back into the end of episode 2, and then misses out some bits as well, which suggests a timing problem or something. And Tom mentioned this last week, the wide shot. Oh yes. Oh, and it's a bit of a Peril of Pauline thing, because they've given us Hal and Sarah, which they didn't have before, which means that they're in place to save the Doctor, which we didn't know in the cliffhanger last week. So that's a bit of a cheat. I like a flaming torch. That's a lovely shot, isn't it? I think I've been there in that. Yeah, I think I've been in that. Have I been in that bit? I don't know. I'm not going to start playing geography. I have been to Peckforton Castle, but I don't know if I was near that particular wall. Top marks to the costumes. I like the costumes it's James Aitchison, isn't it? Well, he's an Oscar nominee, for goodness sake. I do like Professor Rubish, and there was a great picture of him in the Doctor Who magazine, Doctor Who Archives, that I had. I bought it from my grandparents, that's right, in Newbury and Berkshire, and I took it to school with me, and it was read it over and over and over again. And it was in the days when the archives just gave you the plot, pretty much, but the pictures would have captions, so I knew that Donald Pelmier played Professor Rubish, so that was something. There were no pictures of Iron Gron and Blood Axe, though, unfortunately. I love all of Iron Gron's lines, and this brilliant sort of bargain of necessity that they have with them, which Iron Gron completely misjudges, and poor old Blood Axe, who, let's not forget, is probably a filthy murderer, a horrible man, but John J. Carney makes him so likeable because he's so stupid, but he's not incompetent, and he does the things that he's asked to do, but he's stupid, but likeably so. And John J. Carney he's in the Blake 7 episode that Colin Baker is in. He's Colin Baker's villainous sidekick in that. He's in A Clockwork Orange. Yeah, he had a decent career, but he had quite sort of good sort of character actor, sort of slightly thuggish looks. It's an interesting how things like stowaway become because Adric was a stowaway, Zoe was a stowaway. It's a thing that companions did, was they said, we don't sort of accept that we don't have that as a sort of thing that people do. A bit like getting knocked out. People don't get with the blow on the head. It was just sort of stuff that we took in our stride in dramas. People were stowaways. I suppose that's a hangover from sort of adventure series with actual boats and things. Sarah, I never talk about the regulars enough in this podcast, I don't think, because I think I take them for granted, and because they're obviously not unique to this story. The way Sarah is weaved into this story is brilliant. The fact that she thinks the Doctor is the bad guy is a great sort of comedy of mistaken identity, and a great way to introduce their dynamic. And the fact that she enters on a lie, pretending to be somebody that she isn't. I love how John Pertwee's Doctor is with sort of the gentry. We should hate him for it because I like when he's a nobleman of Draconia who knows how to behave in a court. But it means he is quite sort of feudal. He is a bit sort of, oh no, maybe he's just polite. Well, I like politeness, but when you're polite to people who preside over a very unjust system, it does make you seem like you're sucking up to the rich people. But I think John Pertwee does it so well, how he ingratiates is the wrong word because that suggests obsequiousness, but how well he fits into sort of courtly etiquette. I don't know what he calls it, actual disposals. Whereas you can sort of, I'm not sure you can imagine Tom Baker being quite the same. Although his doctor knows how to talk to people. It's a clever thing that the script writers do, is that they, can keep the doctor. The doctor is very good at communicating with people in their plane, because the doctor is so well travelled and knows how to negotiate his way around a conversation. Oh yeah, this is the episode where they have the big old fight in the castle, which is a great sequence. Alan Bromley, the director. Right, I had a book called Me, the book about me. And what made you go onto the stage and become a stand-up comedian, where you spend almost every evening getting people to look at you and listen to the things you say? And what will you do when you can't do that anymore? I'll do a podcast where the only person talking is me. God, I'm insufferable. But somebody once, I think the mistake sometimes people make is that people who talk a lot like the sound of their own voice. Not necessarily. It's just trying to block out all the other noises. And people that do stand-up think they're funny. No, people who think they're funny don't need to try and prove it every single night. It's a confidence trick. But I had this book. I got this book as I think in a school prize giving thing or something. And what you do is, it was shot by Giles Brandreth, but it was you fill in stuff about yourself. So it was like a sort of personal inventory, but it was done and it was a bit of fun. And one of the pages was, if you wanted to have a different name, or what's your favourite first name? And my favourite first name was Alan. I don't know. Alan was names like Alan and Mike and Ian were quite cool when I was. And I love names like that. I'm surprised I didn't choose Ian, because I like the name Ian Martyr. I like people who are called Ian. And I liked people with moustache. I like Midge Ure's thin moustache. I wanted to be called Ian or Alan and have a thin moustache. And my moustache has never been very strong until very recently. But now it's too much of it. So I chose the name Alan, and I chose and it said, "What's your favourite surname?" And I like the surname Pertwee. But then it said, "And what name would you like to be called?" And I thought, well, I'm not going to be called Alan, but I can't carry off Pertwee. I like the name Pertwee, but I wouldn't bestow it upon me. It's like I wouldn't call myself Stud Muffing Cleopatra, because it would be incongruous when I shuffled in. So I couldn't be a Pertwee. So then it said, what was your... And I think you were supposed to put your favourite first name, favourite surname, and then when it said, so what would you like to be called? You'd combine those. And I would have been Alan Pertwee. But no, so I put, no, I'd like to be called Alan Bromley. And I don't know that I knew the name, but I think it must have just sunk in. I must have seen it written down in either a magazine or a book or somewhere. Because I think I only discovered later that Alan Bromley was the name of a Doctor Who director. And this weird... that he's not used by the same producer. A lot of directors, either stay with, used over and over again by the same producer, or they're, in-house directors who stretch quite a long way across the series and are, great purveyors of Doctor Who. And then you get the odd one like Gerald Blake, who does a Troughton story, Abominable Snowmen, and Tom Baker, The Invasion of Time, and Alan Bromley, who does a John Pertwee, the first story of season 11, last of block 10, The Time Warrior, and then Nightmare of Eden, two different beasts you could not have, except for the fact that David Dacre is in both of them. And Alan Bromley, of course, had a terrible time on Nightmare of Eden. But I remember reading an interview with Elizabeth Sladen, and she said she thought that Alan Bromley was the wrong director for Doctor Who, and he'd been a producer. He'd had a great career as a producer at the BBC. He worked on Out of the Unknown. And his wife was the actress June Ellis, who was in the film of Quatermass and the Pit. But Alan Bromley was somebody I think we all assumed was quite long dead, and nobody ever interviewed him, I think, about Doctor Who. Who knows if he would have given one, because Nightmare of Eden was a bit of a disaster. But I think he actually only died in the early 90s, and we just didn't... I think, did nobody get in touch? I don't know, I must ask Richard Bignell about that, because I'm sure some people would have tried, but it seemed to me that he just sort of got overlooked. I think people because he'd been a senior producer and then his directing came at the sort of end of his career. I think maybe it was just one of those terrible things where people assumed he died. And that's happened, and then you suddenly read and go, God, they were alive all the time. That's happened to me with a couple of Quatermass's actors. But I think the Time Warrior is really nicely directed. I think this battle is done brilliant. I love this location stuff. They really make use of the castle. It's really worth the trip up north. And this is done very, very well. And it looks like there's a lot of people there, which there are. But of course, and the Doctor's doing a trick to show there are a lot of people there by just putting hats on mannequins. So that's quite nice that the television production has to sort of make you think there are loads of people there, and the Doctor also has to make you think there are loads of people there. These sulphur explosions are brilliant. I love all that yellow smoke. One blows up really perilously close to a bloke at one point, coming up very soon. And they do explosions very well in the Pertwee era. In the 80s, explosions suddenly get quite tense. Look at that! That's a brilliant explosion next to some poor guy. He gets his helmet blown off. But explosions get a bit tinsely in the 80s, and I think. It was one example of Doctor Who where we sort of regressed a bit, and the Sontarans are another, where the design got progressively worse as time went on. I think that also happened with explosions in Doctor Who. The explosions in the Pertwee era are great. I think those ones in Carnival of Monsters on the marshes. But I like those superior stink bombs. That's Pertwee tossing them over his shoulder like that. That's great. I never talk about Pertwee. I do take Pertwee for granted because he's just tall and John Pertwee, and he's just Doctor Who. He's just the Doctor. You just he's just doing the Donald Wolfett thing there. Oh my! So that's a wonderful nod to those sort of actors who'd give that was acting in hammy stage times. If I can go, and the actor who played King Lear before the storm scene would give as long an introduction as possible. I'm sure there was a story. Was it Nigel Davenport was playing it and do the blow wind and crack your cheeks, and he was doing it from the wings to come on, and I think somebody said to him, yeah, but Charles Lawton started in his dressing room. Look at Kevin Lindsay. He looks fantastic. I love the fact that Linx just goes, no mate, you were crap as well. And the fact that these two face off so brilliantly with each other. But I totally buy the relationship. I don't like it when baddies don't get on and are always double-crossing each other. And I've said before in this podcast, when a baddie kills a baddie, it actually annoys me. Because it's sort of like, well, the hero doesn't even need to be there then. Threaten me once more and I will destroy. I love this. And look at the way he stands, the way when he knocks down, he sort of has his arm ready for action. But Irongron knows not to attack him, but he will still do a parting shot when he's out of the room. Or, oh no, he doesn't, he just does a look. But I buy all of that. And I don't mind that these two are against each other because it sort of fuels the dynamic. I still buy that they need each other. I still buy that even though they argue, they are uneasy allies. It's a relationship I totally buy. And they're both quite larger than life characters, but played totally plausibly. They make sense within the scale of their own sort of pitch and performance. Pertwee was doing the chucking thing there, wasn't he? Yeah. He is a bit of a, well, if this is what the gentry do here, I'll do it as well. Whereas I think I wouldn't throw the chicken bone. But yeah, I think Alan Bromley does a very good job. He casts it very well. The fact that you've got Alan Rowe, playing the sort of dullest part, and he's such a good actor, Alan Rowe. And yes, did I mention, yes, he was Geoffrey Belden's partner. I discovered that because I once went to London and I went to a Swiss cottage library and I spent most of my time in London as a country boy looking through Spotlight to see which actors were still around, and I noticed that Alan Rowe and Geoffrey Bayldon were credited as taking each other's photograph, and I thought, oh, something's going on there. And yeah, they were partners for many years. And I was slightly annoyed when the Guardian did Geoffrey Bayldon's obit. They didn't mention Alan Rowe, and I actually sent them a thing and went, "You haven't mentioned his partner of 50 years." And they went, "Oh well, we asked the Catweasel Society, and they said he you know he didn't have a partner." I said, "Well, maybe the Catweasel Society are perhaps interested in that side of things, but I think yeah, so sad. So which I think sad that, and this is recent. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm from the days when This Is Your Life, when if the guest was an actor, they might be there with. I'm sitting next to you where the wives normally sit is your mother, and behind you is your close personal friend, and you go, "Oh, come on." Even we could, but it wasn't said. This is in my lifetime. Here we are. Now, Steve Brunswick is one of the worst actors to have ever been in Doctor Who as the Sentry, and standing next to him is an excellent actor called Andy Abrahams, because all these actors were got from here, from up north, and they were all hired as extras, but one of them was going to get lines. And I said to Andy, and I remember saying to Andy, I worked with Andy at the Royal Exchange, I said, "I'm surprised you've never done a Doctor Who." He said, No, I did one that was at Peckforton Castle. And I went, "Oh God, he's not the guy who's with the craps." Yeah. And I suddenly flashed, because Andy now looks a bit like Arthur Cox, Cully in the Dominators. He's sort of balding, and he's got a moustache now. Arthur Cox doesn't have a moustache in the Dominators, but he has had for most of his career. And Andy has got very much the sort of Arthur Cox look about it. But he's credited on the paperwork here as Andrew Abrahams, but he's not credited in the thing, so I wouldn't have known. Although I do know that one of the extras in this is Ray Dunbobbin, who went on to play Ralph in Brookside, who was a regular in quite a main part. So yeah, the extras were plucked from working actors here up north, but we got a chance to work on a BBC production. So I think perhaps doing extra work was which an actor normally tries not to do. I think was something that they were keen to do because it was working with the BBC and Doctor Who and some decent work close to home, whatever. But Andy's had a great career. He's done loads. Look at he's been in Life on Mars. He's done that Forsyte, the newer Forsyte saga. He's done loads of telly, recent telly. Brilliant at crosswords, lovely man, proper genial old school actor. And he was in this Midsummer Night's Dream that I was in at the Royal Exchange. And I said that he's playing one of the fairies, but the fairies were all sort of old, played by old people. So he came, and they all came quite late into the process. So I got chatting to Andy anyway. So I was surprised he never did a Doctor Who. And he said, "Oh no, I did this one." And I said, "So," I said, "Hang on, but Andy, what happened with this guy?" And he said, "Well, we were just all at lunch, and they said, oh, we need one of you to do a couple of lines, and they just picked somebody." Who was Steve Brunswick, who's not done anything else. Whereas some of the other actors there are actors that went on or already had pretty decent careers. So why Steve Brunswick, the Sentry, who is shocking, but I sort of like, he's almost heroically bad. And is standing next to a really able actor, really good actor, Andy Abrahams. So that amuses me. I shall leave when I'm ready. And I love the fact that he says, "Yeah, and I'm going to go, and I'm not going to make any bones about it. I'm going to blow your castle up, and I'm not going to wait." I love the Rubish not being able to see sort of subplot. It gives him lots of dotty stuff to do, but he proves very able. I love Rubish. I think he's great. Read a couple of reviews which have been quite disparaging about it. I think he plays the part brilliantly. I think he's good fun. And yeah, I'm loving it in the book where he makes his own eyeglass, and he's the one that thwacks Linx on the probic vent, isn't he? Which I think is brilliant. I love all of that. I'm very fond of Professor Rubish, but I've got to be careful not to choose characters or actors. I don't know why I've imposed that rule. I just think because this could get pretty boring. He says, could already be pretty boring. I'm very sorry about that. But look, so yeah, I know I do like Rubish a lot. Oh, and I love the cliffhanger to part 3 as well. Is that now? Oh, not yet. Is it? Surely not yet. But this shot is the cliffhanger. Sorry, I've been banging on. No, because we've got to have, I mean, if a monster's to have a weakness, the probic vent is quite a good one. Makes sense to me about the charging at the back. And I like the way that the Sontarans rationalise it. It means we always have to face our enemy. I like the way they cover up their own weakness in that regard and make a sort of virtue of it, but only a virtue in terms of, Giorgio. I think it is going to come. And what I loved about this episode ending in the book and the way that they do it here is that unusually, instead of shoot them now, it's he fires and the Doctor's face goes red. And I remember reading in the book going, he actually fires? Well, I bet they don't actually do that in the TV version. And they do. And the music sort of kicks in as he's raising his arms. You go, well, they're going to cut. No, because they normally cut before a shot is fired, and next week, he gets knocked out before he gets to make the shot. I love that cliffhanger. Can I have two cliffhangers? Because it is a brilliant cliffhanger. And especially as the Doctor has made a really Century Steve Brunswick. He probably lives down the road. I hope he's happy. I'd love to know his story. He's a part of Doctor Who. He's a part of the legend. I bow down, even though I mock. I'm sorry, but no, I think it's fair enough. He's terrible. But I still love him. I still love everyone involved in Doctor Who. So, I think I am going to go for that cliffhanger just because it's a very special... And I wouldn't have, as a kid, necessarily thought of episode 1's cliffhanger as being particularly special, but I definitely thought of episode 3's as being special. 1 has meant more to me as it goes on, and I think, I explained about episode 1, but I do love that cliffhanger. I love the face-off that the Doctor presents quite a good case to Linx, and Linx just goes, well, I've listened, and my answer is to kill you. I love the bluntness of Linx, the practicality of Linx. Nasty, brutish, and short. Not just in appearance. It's Hobbs, isn't it? Nasty, brutish, and short. But also nasty, brutish, and short in the way that he conducts himself, in his worldview, in his conversation. So I'm going to choose the cliffhanger. Let's see what Tom Salinksy has chosen as his thing from episode 3.
More good stuff in episode 3. I don't think I've spoken much about the sets so far. They look amazing, and the great interior sets on videotape really help, I think, to smooth over the transition between video and film that can be so distracting. Here, it's almost never distracting. We get one of Pertwee's funny voices, always a pleasure. But I think the thing that really stands out for me in this episode, which is true of the whole story, but really stood out for me here, is how good the dialogue is. Robert Holmes is really just having a blast. Longshank Rascal with a mighty nose, obviously, is a very famous line. The fact that Irongron calls Linx Toadface, sort of prefiguring Ace's habit of giving everybody funny nicknames. Not even a sparrow will fill its beak at one peck, all this wonderful Cod Shakespearean stuff. The Doctor quotes Thomas Hobbes and calls Time Lords galactic ticket inspectors. We get to hear Gallifrey for the first time. The dialogue here is just fantastic. Everybody sounds like themselves, and all of the things that people say are interesting and funny and move the plot on and reveal character. It's a real object lesson.
Yeah, I'll take that. And I think in my defence I'm at a disadvantage because when it comes to dialogue, because I have to talk over it all. And in fact, I'd invoked, hadn't I, Longshank Rascal with the Mighty Nose last episode in case I'd missed it, because it's quite hard to be on the ball. And it's from this week. And yeah, Toadface and yeah, all of that stuff. I did, yeah, and perhaps that would have been a more appropriate choice, but I didn't make it, and Tom did, and that's what makes it beautiful, and what means that my initial optimism that I was going to do well on this one has quickly dwindled. Oh, I started so well, and it was downhill, which is appropriate for the story that is charting my journey from birth to here. I started so well, and it's been downhill ever since. But look, I'm very tired, so I'm going to go to bed, and I'm going to save episode 4 for another day, because episode 4, 47 years ago, hasn't been on yet. It is on in a few days' time, and 47 years ago, episode 3 has just been on, and then I was born. So I've got up to my birth point in Doctor Who's history tonight. And as I say, if you've been listening since episode 1, I was feeling a bit melancholy. No biggie, just it's what sometimes happens to you when you're a 47-year-old man. I'm not saying it doesn't happen if you're a 47-year-old woman. I just don't know what it's like to be a 47-year-old woman. I'm speaking purely from, and I'm sure it happens to 35-year-olds and 20, but I know for a fact, I'm just talking from my own experience, you know, it happens as a 47, and you just got to roll with it. I'm not complaining about it. I don't expect any special attention because of it, but I think you have to acknowledge it and do something about it. And what I do about it is that I put on Doctor Who, and what I do about currently is put on Doctor Who and talk to you good people about it, because that's currently what I'm doing when I watch Doctor Who a lot of the time. So thanks for giving me somebody to talk to. And to leave this process feeling much more chipper than I did when I started it. I hope I've had the same effect on you. It would be awful if you listen to this and start off quite cheerful and end up wishing you... That'd be like the guy in Airplane who starts yabbering on, and people, you're there listening to this podcast and you self-immolate or you shoot yourself or whatever. Yeah. The internet has had to ban a podcast because too many people who listened to it lost the will to live. I hope that hasn't happened. It's a humble hope, but yes, I hope this hasn't left you losing the will to live. So thanks for being here. I will see you next time to see how they get out of that amazing cliff. I still stand by choosing that cliffhanger. The Doctor got shot in the face. I can't beat that. So I'm just going to go to bed. Good night.